What if everything you believe about justice, truth, and reality is nothing more than a shadow on a wall? Plato's Republic begins by challenging the very foundations of our thinking. Plato's Republic stands as one of the most influential and enduring works in the history of Western philosophy, a text that not only examines justice in the individual and the state, but also constructs a grand vision of what an ideal society could look like when governed by reason and the pursuit of the common good. Written around 380 BCE, the dialogue unfolds primarily between Socrates and a group of Athenian interlocutors who gather to discuss the meaning of justice. Yet the discussion expands far beyond simple definitions and becomes a sweeping exploration of politics, morality, psychology, education, and metaphysics. At the heart of the Republic lies a deceptively simple question: what is justice? Socrates approaches this question through a series of careful arguments, challenging conventional beliefs and encouraging his audience to think beyond appearances. He famously proposes that to understand justice in the individual soul, one must first examine justice on a larger scale, within the structure of a city-state. Thus begins the construction of the Callipolis, the ideal city, built through pure reason and designed to reflect harmony and virtue. Plato imagines a society divided into three major classes: the producers, the auxiliaries, and the guardians, each corresponding to a part of the human soul. The producers, who include farmers, artisans, and merchants, represent the appetite-driven part of the soul that seeks physical satisfaction and material gain. The auxiliaries, or warriors, symbolize the spirited part of the soul responsible for courage, honor, and moral enthusiasm. The guardians, who serve as rulers and philosopher kings, represent the rational element, which must govern the city just as reason must govern the human soul. Justice then emerges when each class performs its proper role without interfering with the roles of others, mirroring the internal harmony of a well-ordered individual whose desires, emotions, and intellect operate in balanced unity under the guidance of reason. This idea challenges modern readers because it suggests a hierarchical and rigid social structure, yet Plato's symbolic intention is to show that moral order requires inner discipline, self-knowledge, and the alignment of personal identity with the greater good. One of the most compelling aspects of the Republic is Plato's argument for the philosopher king, a concept that is often misunderstood as elitist, but is meant to emphasize the moral responsibility of leaders. According to Plato, only those who love wisdom, are free from corruption, and understand the true nature of reality can govern justly. He argues that the majority of political leaders are driven by power, wealth, or public opinion, making them susceptible to injustice, error, and tyranny. Philosophers, however, are not motivated by personal gain, but by the pursuit of truth itself. They are individuals who have undergone decades of education in mathematics, dialectics, physical training, and ethical development. Their ultimate achievement is knowledge of the good, an abstract and transcendent principle that Plato describes as the highest form of reality. The good illuminates and gives meaning to all other forms of knowledge, just as the sun in the visible world allows living beings to grow and be known. This leads to one of the most famous passages in the history of philosophy, the allegory of the cave. Plato describes human beings as prisoners chained inside a dark cave, watching shadows cast on a wall by a fire behind them. Mistaking shadows for reality, they live in a world of illusion. When a prisoner is freed and dragged into the sunlight, he experiences pain, confusion, and resistance. But gradually he comes to understand the true world beyond the cave. Once enlightened, the philosopher has a duty to return to the cave and help others escape the darkness of ignorance, even if the prisoners resist or attack him for challenging their beliefs. This allegory remains deeply relevant today, serving as a metaphor for education, critical thinking, and the difficult journey of confronting uncomfortable truths in a world dominated by appearances, misinformation, and habitual thinking. Plato's exploration of justice also extends into discussions about the nature of morality and the dangers of tyranny. In Book 8 and 9, he presents a psychological analysis of different political systems: timocracy, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny, showing how each political structure mirrors certain human personality types. Democracy, while celebrated for its freedom, is criticized by Plato for its lack of discipline, where excessive liberty eventually collapses into chaos. In such an environment, a tyrant can rise to power by exploiting fear, promising protection, and manipulating emotions. Plato's portrait of tyranny is not merely political, but psychological. The tyrannical individual is a slave to his own desires, lacking self-control, consumed by paranoia, and incapable of genuine happiness. Through this analysis, Plato suggests that injustice corrupts the soul from within, making the unjust person miserable even if he appears powerful. In contrast, the just person, a person whose soul is ordered and rational, lives a life of harmony and fulfillment. This view challenges the cynical belief that injustice leads to success, instead arguing that moral virtue is inherently tied to well-being. Another major theme in the Republic is education. Plato sees education as the foundation of a just society, not merely as the transmission of information, but as the shaping of character and the awakening of the soul. He emphasizes the importance of music, poetry, gymnastics, and philosophy as tools for cultivating moral discipline and intellectual clarity. However, Plato is critical of certain types of art, particularly those that imitate irrational emotions or vice, arguing that such art can corrupt the mind. This position has sparked centuries of debate about censorship, artistic freedom, and the moral impact of culture. Plato's educational vision also includes the controversial idea that men and women should receive the same education and training if they possess the same natural abilities. For his time, this was a radical proposition, suggesting that gender equality should be based on merit, not custom. While the Republic presents a powerful ideal of justice and rational order, it is also a text filled with paradoxes and open questions. Is Plato's ideal society achievable, or is it intentionally utopian, meant only to illustrate philosophical principles? Does his strict social hierarchy limit individual freedom, or does it serve as a metaphor for the disciplined inner life of a virtuous person? Many readers interpret the Republic not as a literal political blueprint, but as a symbolic exploration of human psychology and ethical development. Others criticize Plato for authoritarian tendencies, particularly in his views on censorship and the power of the guardians. Yet even critics acknowledge the extraordinary ambition and intellectual depth of the work. The Republic does not force the reader to accept Plato's conclusions. Instead, it invites reflection, argument, and continuous questioning. Ultimately, Plato's Republic endures because it addresses universal human concerns: the nature of justice, the responsibilities of leadership, the dangers of ignorance, and the path to wisdom. It challenges us to examine our own beliefs, confront our own caves, and consider what a just life truly means. Its influence can be seen across philosophy, political theory, psychology, literature, and modern discussions about ethics, education, and governance. More than a book, it is a philosophical journey that asks each of us to evaluate the structure of our society and the structure of our soul, reminding us that justice is not simply a legal or political matter, but a profound and personal pursuit of harmony, truth, and the good.